Hello, amazing Mothers of America. Welcome to our Mom to Mom program, where we gather virtually every second and fourth Tuesday to enjoy listening to and interacting with amazing speakers as they share their expertise on topics for moms. Thanks for joining us as we connect, inspire, and learn together. And today I'm super excited. I think I'm always excited about the speakers, but today I love this woman, Emmalou Penrod. She is an incredible woman who has dedicated her life to helping families. She has a weekly show. She has newsletters, such great information for moms, for parents all the time that will help families. So I'm excited you're here, Emmalou. Thank you for joining us today on our Mom to Mom program.
Well, thank you, Angela. I'm honored to be here.
Yay. So you have, um, let's see, you have 7 children and 19 grandchildren. I'm imagining that that is pretty challenging. You've gone through a lot of mom experiences, I'm sure. Do you want to share anything with us?
I have. And what's amazing is what you learn from your children. Now, as my children grew, I was very, very determined to teach them to value people over things. And I would try to work with them when they were small. And one day we got something was delivered in a box that was reinforced with plastic straps. And I was so excited. Yes, we can keep this box. We can reuse it for so many things. It's so sturdy. And my young son, as young boys will, decided to cut off the straps. And when I discovered that, I was just dismayed. Oh my goodness. And I lost it. You ruined this box. We could have used it for so many things. And in the middle of my tirade, my sweet little 4-year-old daughter said, "But a son is more important than a sturdy box." Wow. Did that bring me back down to earth? And I agreed with her. Yes, you're right. A son is much more important than a sturdy box.
I love that story. Sometimes as moms, we get so intent on things, we forget the reason we're doing it, even though we're doing it. I remember just cleaning and cooking and taking care of everything for my kids, and I'm doing so much for them. But sometimes just taking a moment and looking them in the eye was what was needed, not the cleaning and the getting stuff ready for school or whatever. So I love that. Sometimes a boy's more important than a plastic box. That is for sure true. Well, that is great. I'm going to introduce Emmalou to you, give you a little bit of information about her background, her expertise, and then we are going to turn the time over to her. So she is a wife, as I said, a mother of 7, a grandmother 19. She's a retired school teacher, and she's the author of a book called Navigating the Educational System: 5 Strategies to Get the Best for Your Child. She also is a show host on Win Win Women, where she has a weekly show where she talks about topics that will help families. And she's a family relationship coach for healing your families. She earned a BS degree in elementary education and had an endorsement in special education. And then she also earned a Master of Arts in educational counseling. She was a school teacher for 24 years, working mainly with students that had special needs. And then she ended that long career at a residential treatment at a facility for youth at risk. Her experience and values have taught her that families are the foundation of society, and I could not agree more. She's passionate about making the world a better place by strengthening families, and she does what she has set out to do. So Emmalou today is going to talk to us and share her technique, RESPECT, which I feel like I should be singing that song, about conflict in families and how to manage them. So Emmalou, we're just going to turn the time right over to you. So excited to hear from you today.
Well, thank you, Angela. I am so honored to be able to do this. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm just excited because this topic is key for family relationships. And as Angela mentioned, I am so passionate about strengthening those family relationships. They're so important. And conflict sounds scary, and sometimes we're afraid of it. But anytime, conflict is inevitable in families. Anytime you have 2 or more people sharing living space, there will be conflict, there will be disagreements. But we don't have to fear it or even try to avoid it. because when it's handled properly, it will actually deepen your understanding and appreciation of each other. It will strengthen that relationship as you solve this conflict together. And so that's what I want to share. Now, I want you to first notice this photo. Look for the cell phone that's flying through the room. There, you'll see it there, just in front of the table. It looks like maybe this girl came to the dinner table for the umpteenth time with her cell phone, and mom just had it. That was it. She grabbed the phone and she just threw it. This represents something that might be a conflict in your home. Sometimes these electronic devices, as amazing as they are, can cause conflict in a family. Now, the challenge is quite often we approach a conflict like this one, where maybe it looks like the mom has really strong feelings about whether or not that cell phone should be there, whether or not her daughter is spending too much time on it. Sometimes we approach a conflict like this. We know we're right. We have got to pound it into their head that we're right and they're wrong. Now, obviously, this isn't what we want in our homes. This isn't the atmosphere that we want. Notice how these two people are interacting. They're obviously opponents. They have the mindset that they can't win unless the other person loses. Obviously, this way of handling conflict damages relationships. It causes harm and hurt feelings and misunderstandings. Let me tell you about this book, The Anatomy of Peace. Angela mentioned that I ended my career at a residential treatment facility for youth at risk. And this was required reading. This is a powerful book. I recommend it. It was written more for those who work with troubled teens and covering issues far more impactful than bringing a cell phone to the dinner table. But as you can see by the subtitle, Resolving the Heart of Conflict, that's what it was about. It was written for anyone who worked with the teens, but also for their parents, those cases where there was a relationship that had been severely damaged and needed to be repaired. It was for teachers and therapists working with the youth so they could understand how to relate with these youth. So it diagrammed this process as a pyramid. And at the very tip of that pyramid is a little section where you're solving the problem. You're actually addressing something that's going wrong, something that needs to be corrected. And the authors point out that quite often as adults, that's where we start. We want to start right there and completely ignore the rest of a pyramid. Now, the nature of a pyramid, we can't start at the top. We need to go to the base. We need to start with a foundation and work up to the point where the relationship is strong enough, it's ready to handle addressing the problem. The base of this pyramid is your way of being, how you are as you go into this conflict resolution. You either have a heart at peace or a heart at war. If you can see others as people, if you're going into this conflict resolution and you're looking at the other person and you can see them as an individual, someone who has their own needs and goals, and you can see their hopes, needs, and cares as important as your own, then you have a heart at peace. If, on the other hand, you see the other person as an object, an obstacle to be overcome, a hindrance, a vehicle to be used, or something that's irrelevant, they're just interfering with what you want, then you have a heart at war. Now, this was just so life-changing for me as a teacher in this private school. I was able to understand that if I viewed these students as just a disruption in my classroom, I wasn't able to help them. I couldn't connect with them and teach them. But if I took the time to get to know them, to show them some empathy and some care and concern about their well-being, I was able to develop a rapport, and I could be a teacher and help them. So this represents that heart at war, where we're seeing the other person as the problem, the opponent, the one who needs to be defeated. And this represents the heart at peace. Now, I want you to imagine that family member you frequently have conflict with. Maybe just think of that. You know who they are. Think of this person and imagine that instead of being in a boxing ring and they're the problem, you are journeying together. You're on a hike through the woods or up a mountain, and you're going to your favorite destination. Say it's a summit where you can have a fabulous view of the valley below. And as you round the corner on your path, you see that a boulder has been dislodged and is now blocking your path. There's just a sheer drop off on the right, and then there's a steep cliff on your left. Well, you're not going to waste time trying to figure out whose fault this is and trying to pass blame. You're journeying together. You see the boulder as the problem, and you start to figure out, and you're working together, and you're analyzing, how can we get through this? How do we remove this obstacle? Can we climb over the boulder? Is there some way we can move it out of the way? This is the heart at peace. You're no longer seeing the other person as the problem that needs to be solved or fixed, but you're seeing them as your ally, someone you're going to work with, collaborate with to solve this problem that's blocking your journey together in your relationship. And the mother and daughter, let's think of that example. Maybe instead of attacking the daughter, throwing the phone, they could have a discussion. How can we improve our interactions during meals? They could have a conversation. So I learned from my parents. These are my parents. And I learned so much from them about how to have a healthy marriage, how to have a good relationship. Now, it's interesting when adult siblings get together and reminisce over their childhood memories, even though they grew up in the same home and they had the same parents, they can still have different memories. I was the last child born. By the time I was born, my parents had been married for 14 years. So I have siblings that are 10, 12 years older than I am. And they remember my parents fighting. I don't. I remember that they disagreed, but they seemed to have a way of talking about it, reviewing options, and then deciding together what to do. Now, this incident I'm going to tell you about happened when I was 11 years old. So by then, they had been married for 25 years. And I believe that in that time, they had worked out a very effective method for conflict resolution. And I use this as my model. So I like the acronym RESPECT. So just remember the letters in RESPECT. And like Angela said, think of the song. But this is how it worked. As in any well-run home, we had structure. And we all, as children, understood that when we came home from school, we did our chores, any homework we had, and then we could watch TV until it was dinner time. It worked. It was motivating for me. But one day, as I was on my way to the TV room to watch TV, I saw a drama unfolding in the living room that was far more fascinating than anything on TV. This is what happened. My father came home from work. He walked into the living room up to the mantle over the fireplace, and he began to empty his pockets. He took out his keys, his wallet, his handkerchief, his comb, and he began putting everything on the mantle. Now, that wasn't unusual. He had done that before. In fact, that was kind of his routine. But this day, my mother swooped in from the kitchen, grabbed those items off the mantle, held them tightly to her chest, and just kind of glared at him. He was completely taken aback. He was not expecting this. And she let him know rather firmly that she had just cleaned the house and she wanted to keep it neat and orderly. And I could see that both of them felt very strongly about this issue. This seemingly minor issue was a big deal to them. And I thought, oh boy, what are they going to do next? And the process they went through next, and also many other observations, taught me this respect approach. So let's start with the first letter, which stands for respect. Now, many people would argue that respect is more important than family relationships than love. Think about it. When you love someone, you can get to feel really comfortable, like I can truly be myself. I can say or do anything that comes to mind because that person will still love me. And sometimes we can say some pretty hurtful things to people we love. When you respect someone, you tend to be you're more careful about filtering your words and your actions. You value their opinion. You want to support them in reaching their goals. You care about this, how they feel about you. You want to protect this relationship. So my parents treated each other with respect. Even though I could tell the feelings were strong, they did not yell at each other. It was more like watching a gentle game of tennis as they went back and forth over this issue. So just again, look at these two photos again. We have one that represents the heart at war, one that represents the heart at peace. Look at the body language. Where do you see anger? Where do you see calm and connection? Where do you see respect? And looking at these two relationships, what do you see happening to this relationship? Which one is building rapport and trust? My parents approached this conflict with the idea that they wanted to protect that relationship. And so they treated each other with respect. Now, a huge part of respect is understanding your spheres of control. I'm going to show you 3 of them. And I have found that people who don't understand this spend a lot of time being frustrated and miserable. So let's go through this. The first, the largest sphere, is those things that are out of your control. You don't have any control over. It's like the weather. We don't have any control over the weather. We just decide whether or not we're going to take an umbrella. And what other people say, think, or do is outside of our control. Much as we would like to, we really can't control what other people say, think, or do. Now, this next sphere is our sphere of influence. We can influence them. We actually teach people how to treat us by how we choose to respond. And when we talk about setting boundaries in our relationships, we're deciding what we'll do, how we'll respond. The only one we have complete control over, this little inner circle, this sphere, we have 100% control over what we say, think, or do. Now, when our children are young, we have a lot of influence because they value, or they want to please us. They want to be like us. They want to spend time with us. Just like my parents had a huge influence, I learned from their example. We can influence our children, but we can't control them. And when we try to control them, this is when we damage our relationships. This is when we cause harm. This is when we bring contention in the home. And this is not an effective way to resolve conflict. The E stands for everyone has a voice. So I mentioned it was like watching a game of tennis. My parents took turns talking, and they listened to each other. So my dad pulled the breadwinner card. You know, they had more structured roles. My dad said, I'm the family breadwinner. I should be able to put my belongings where it's convenient for me. My mother listened to that. She acknowledged it. She said, yes, you are the family breadwinner. And I'm the homemaker. And I want to be able to decide how the home is kept. But they were respectful in listening to each other. Each of them had an opportunity to express their needs, their feelings. Now, with your children, when your child is old enough to talk, they're old enough to have an opinion. And they want to be heard. They want an opportunity to express their feelings, their opinion. So my parents used active listening. Now, here's another example of this couple. It looks like they may be going over the family budget, maybe coordinating their schedules. Notice that they're not doing anything else. And my parents didn't either. They were focused on this conversation, this issue. They had eye contact. They were actively listening to each other. Now, when you're in active listening, you're also sending verbal and nonverbal cues. Here's an example of a nonverbal cue that says, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to listen to it. You know, she's turned away from him. She's holding her hand out. But in active listening, you're sending nonverbal cues that invite more talk, more discussion. You want to hear and learn more. And also, sometimes when you look at this couple, that looks like they're trying to talk at the same time. And in fact, have you ever had that discussion where you're listening to the other person so you can find enough material, enough ammunition to use it against them to make your point? But in active listening, you're listening to understand what the person is saying. You're not listening to be able to respond. You're not mentally planning your response. And my parents did that. They would acknowledge each other's viewpoint. When my dad said, I'm the family breadwinner, my mother, yes, you are. And you do a very good job with providing for the family. I appreciate that. And sometimes feelings start running really high during this discussion. And then it's perfectly acceptable to just pause. And very rarely can a conflict be resolved in one conversation. Now, my parents did not resolve their conflict on one day. This was a discussion they had every day for several days. It would last from the time my father got home and wanted to put his belongings on the mantle until it was time for dinner. And sometimes his belongings would remain on the mantle. Sometimes they'd go back in his pocket. But they would stop when it was time for dinner. And they always ended with some expression of either humor or love and appreciation. And it sent the message to me as a child watching this. And this is what I was doing every day after school. I wasn't watching TV. I was watching this ongoing serial drama in the living room. It sent the message to me that they both acknowledged their relationship was more important than this issue. And they would continue the discussion until a solution was found. And this leads to the S, support each other. My dad wanted to support my mother as the homemaker. My mother wanted to support my dad as the breadwinner. And I love this illustration of the parents who are supporting their daughter and learning to ride a bike. So as they were resolving this conflict, they still were looking, we need to find a solution that supports each of us. And support can take many forms. Here's one. Sometimes it's just that listening ear, that arm around the shoulder. I care about you. I want to know how you feel. I want to understand better. And sometimes the support is, let's learn a new skill. Maybe the conflict is the messy home and the dirty dishes. And this is being handled in a very appropriate way. Notice the man is smiling. And, you know, children love positive interactions with adults. And they love spending time doing things together. And when they learn a new skill, they feel good about themselves. So this is one way, in a very positive way, they're resolving a conflict by, let's learn a new skill. The man, the dad or the grandpa, I'm not sure which, is supporting the boy in learning a new skill, and the boy is learning to support the family in helping to keep it clean and orderly. The P is for patience. It takes patience. As I said, my parents continued this discussion for several days. Most conflict resolution does take time. And it's having the patience to, and that belief in the relationship, we care enough about this relationship, we're going to take whatever time it takes to resolve this. Patience also applies to honoring and accepting their developmental stage, you know, with children, making sure we understand where they are and that we're not expecting anything unrealistic of them. And even with adults, with adult children, with spouses, we're understanding, we're accepting them as they are, where they are. We're learning to know them well enough that we can let them be themselves. I worked with students with special needs. Sometimes I just accepted that expecting them to sit still and not talk was not realistic. That's just not where they were. That leads to the E, the empathy. And just when you can put yourself in their shoes, either feel what they're feeling or understand what they're feeling and communicate that with you. My parents did that. They showed empathy for each other. They still knew what they wanted, but they didn't want it at the expense of the other. The mother and daughter, maybe the mother could express empathy to the daughter. I can see you're really attached to your phone. It really means a lot to me. Can we talk about that? And anytime you show empathy, a sincere desire to understand someone else, they're much more likely to reciprocate. And that is huge. Sometimes the best way to show empathy is through service. You can show you understand how they feel by doing something you know that will be meaningful and be helpful to them. The C is collaboration, and I saw my parents collaborate. I like this picture of the family. It looks like they're preparing a meal together. Everybody's participating. They're all in this together. And my parents knew that they had to find a solution that worked for both of them. So they would start making suggestions. Well, what about if we did this? Well, what about, well, could you? And they were just, it's like getting everything out on the table. Let's just look at all the options. Let's just take a long view, and let's get creative. Maybe we need to do something we've never done before. Collaborating is working together. And I saw my parents do that as they worked together to find a solution. And T is take time to find the win-win. And they did. It took them several days, but they finally came up with the solution of mom bought some decorative dishes that fit in with her decor that she could put on the mantle. And then dad could put his personal belongings in those dishes. This satisfied my father's need for convenience, and it satisfied my mother's need for order and eliminating clutter. Peace reigned in the home, and I went back to watching TV. But it was a powerful lesson to me about how they resolved this conflict, just watching them go through this process and realizing they valued their relationship enough to show the respect, to support each other, to empathize, and to take the time it took to come up with a solution that met everyone's needs. So, just a quick review. I love this picture. This shows the results of resolving conflict with respect. You can have peace and harmony in a home. It's not saying you'll never have conflicts. You will have conflicts, but you'll be able to handle them so everyone's needs are met. So it's respect. Everyone has a voice. You support each other. It takes patience. You use empathy. You collaborate, and you take time to find the win-win. Now, my greatest challenge as a mother was managing my emotions. I would set a firm resolve every morning. I will not lose my temper today. And some days it didn't go very well. And some days I made it clear till 10 a.m. So I wrote a guide on how you can, that knee-jerk reaction, how you can change that knee-jerk negative reaction to a more positive response. And there on the screen, you'll see 8steps.emmaloupenrod.com. And you can get that freebie there. Remember, respect when you're resolving conflict in your family.
Emmalou, I love this so much. This is such great information. I feel like in families, we get in the middle of a situation because, like you said, conflict is inevitable and we just are flying by the seat of our pants. We don't have a plan. But what you've done today is you have given us a plan. I took notes. So I feel like writing it all out, posting RESPCT with the word that it goes with the letter on my refrigerator, so that I can remember, because when you're in the heat of the moment, it's so hard. And also, I think this would be a great thing for like a family meeting to sit down with the kids and say, hey, we've got a lot of conflict going on. How are we going to resolve it as a family? Get their ideas, get their input. So thank you for sharing this. This is huge. Such great information.
My pleasure.
You're amazing and awesome. All right. So I want to thank Emmalou for being here today and also let you know that on May 14th, we will have our next speaker. We'll be hearing from Lindsay Garlock, and she's going to be teaching us how to go from stress to serenity. Who doesn't need that, right? But she uses something called the radical acceptance mindfulness technique, and she's been using that for 10 years. In fact, that's what she used when she found herself a widow at age 35 years old, and she had 4 children under the age of 8. So she'll help us move from a place of constant stress and control seeking behavior to living in serenity with everything from spilled milk to huge life altering experiences like death. So I think it's going to be wonderful. And then next week, the next couple of weeks, Deanne will be on our podcast, and she will be sharing mothering lessons learned from the 2024 Mothers of the Year from each of the states. So until next time, remember, you are not alone. You have an army of mothers all around you cheering you on. Thanks for joining us as we connect, inspire, and learn together. See you next time. Thank you.